of achievements on there. World champion, world's runner-up. He's won nationals a couple times, and he's won a ton of regionals. I mean, every format seems to suit him in one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. I think he still has the record for the most regional wins. He also has another top 8 at the Pokemon World Championships. He got 9th at the Pokemon World Championships, and so on and so on. Yeah, we could be talking about his accomplishments for ages, but for this tournament, he's actually using a team that reminds us a little bit of the team that he used to win the 2016 World Championships. This time around, though, it's not that Rayquaza, but instead the Yveltal and Kyogre core. And yeah, added to that is the Bronzong, Togedemaru, Incineroar, and Gengar.
Well, you say it's the one he used. You used it as well at that tournament, Marcus.
Yeah,
and you
true.
did pretty well as well. So I'm going to say you know the ins and outs of the team pretty well. The one thing I sort of drew the comparison on yesterday was Togedemaru and Raichu, kind of making that like-for-like swap. Would you say they're nearly identical and just a little different in typing? Or is there something about Togedemaru that really sets it alive?
Well, so yeah, there are some small differences. For example, Togedemaru has access to U-turn, whereas Raichu used Volt Switch. That means that you can hit Primal Groudon with that move in order to reposition a little better. In addition to that, well, you do not have the Endeavor that was used on Raichu back in the day, but you have the option of Super Fang. So it's some small traits. I mean, it's constant damage that you are putting out with tiny Electro Mouse Pokemon, so that really didn't change. Also, the Steel typing, though, helps it a little bit more against Pokemon like Tapu Lele, which is common now, or that Xerneas, of course.
Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of change-up. Super Fang to Endeavor has got to be one of the biggest changes, I think. I do like that. I do like having Super Fang. We've seen those moves that lower health by half, the Nature's Madness, Super Fangs. Those are always helpful because in a similar way to Endeavor, you basically say the next hit will knock you out.
Yeah.
That's just the amount of damage that we put out now. Doing half health to things is pretty consistent. I will say there's no Emboar on this team. And
yeah, certainly.
That's one of the first teams I remember of his. And Incineroar or Emboar? Where's the Emboar? That's all I want to know.
Yeah, but I think both trainers are ready, and we are ready as well to jump into our next top 8 game. It's Luca Marcato from Italy against Wolfe Glick from the United States of America, and that is going to be a great game for sure. So once again, Luca with that Chachtal Sakataka, a really niche tech. He might be the only player using it in the entire tournament, but that allows his Sakataka to switch out of the Shadow Tech of Mega Gengar. So Wolfe must come up with a new game plan, and I'm really curious seeing as how he wants to approach this matchup.
Yeah, well, we're going to see the leads take the field right now. Tapu Lele alongside Stakataka for Luca will be facing down against Bronzong and Yveltal on Wolfe's side of the field. So certainly not the matchups and the leads we've been seeing throughout the course of this tournament.
Yeah, I think we've seen the Stakataka and Tapu Lele lead from Luca before, but Bronzong and Yveltal, that looks really weird. Probably prepared to face down that Stakataka as, yeah, Luca probably wants to have it on the field for as long as possible and then get that advantage of being able to switch out of Shadow Tech. So right here, I think that the Yveltal is under a lot of pressure from both the Tapu Lele as well as the Stakataka, versus Bronzong is sitting pretty comfortable there. It could go for a Gyro Ball to do a lot of damage, if not KO the Tapu Lele, and or set up or reverse the Trick Room. So Luca wants to do something about that, sends in the Incineroar to shuffle one round of Intimidate on the Bronzong.
Yeah, well, it's getting Intimidate down on Bronzong and Yveltal. I do quite like that. I think it's got the potential to really, really help out as we kind of go through this game.
Maybe the taunt coming out, but we've seen before that this Bronzong carries the Psychium Z, so if it wanted to, it could still use some of its status moves, though we are seeing a Gyro Ball and not quite knocking out the Tapu Lele of Luca.
Yeah, that's so close, and I think, a very kind of safe turn played out there. Wolfe identifying, he needs to start getting damage down, and instead of making that big prediction, instead of making that guess where you try and reverse a Trick Room, for example, the Tapu Lele just gets hit with a Gyro Ball for its trouble, and that's actually not a great start for Luca. Of course, this turn he's got an Incineroar in. The Incineroar's in a very odd position in the Psychic terrain. So you do have to be a little bit thoughtful about how that one's going to pan out.
Can still fake out the Yveltal though, seeing as it is a flying type, and does a lot of damage to Bronzong. So Wolfe now is the one who probably wants to reposition himself a little bit. He could switch into his Primal Kyogre, of course, because that really is threatening the Incineroar a lot. But I think it's like a game of like two cowboys staring down each other, and who's gonna send in the weather guy first, because then that gives the other one the opportunity to reset the weather later on. So it's always a tough decision to make.
We're gonna see some switching around right here. Stakataka taking the place of that very heavily damaged damage Tapu Lele, while Wolfe decides that Bronzong may be under pressure and is just going to switch out for an Incineroar of his own. The switch out on the Bronzong did occur last, so he's now got an Intimidate down on both the Stack Attacker and the Incineroar. That's great value for him there, as we're going to see the U-turn on Incineroar. I think we're going to see a lot of switching over the course of this one, really to see how that one goes. We did see Yveltal as well weave in that foul play.
Yeah, for sure. And due to how the speed worked, Incineroar did get off Intimidate on the Stack Attacker, therefore reducing its attack stat, meaning that foul play from the Yveltal does a little less damage. So it's always kind of like, yeah, I mean, Intimidate is a great ability, but if you have foul play at the same time, you just gotta try and figure out ways of where and when you want to do which. But yeah, foul play easily would have been enough to knock out the Tapu Lele, though Luca decided that he did not want one Pokemon to go down yet, and now also doesn't send in the Tapu Lele, which is heavily damaged. Instead, gonna be the first to send out the Weather Pokemon. It's gonna be the Primal Groudon for him.
Yeah, Primal Groudon, one of those that if you don't have a proper answer to it, it's going to be a handful. We do know, of course, that Wolfe does have an answer, and we can kind of assume that will be his fourth Pokemon, the one that hasn't been revealed yet. So Luca really needs to capitalize on having this Groudon in play as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Definitely. So now Luca could be the one wanting to set up Trick Room, and it's definitely going to be important for these two guys to figure out which and who is faster between Groudon and Kyogre, because that really changes a lot about whether you want the Trick Room to be set up or not. So Luca right now in a pretty decent position. He could try to just set up Trick Room with a Stack Attacker if he wanted to. And Groudon also not under that much pressure. Of course, Foul Play does a good chunk to it, but it could retaliate back with like a Precipice Blades to hit the Incineroar or Fire Punch to hit the Yveltal.
You have to be careful as well if you're trying to just change the weather simply on Luca's team. You're trying to catch him with the Primordial Seed, because we saw yesterday, that skill swap. Not going to make things easy at all. If you make the wrong calls or you don't have the time or answer to do that, you could end up in a whole lot of trouble. We're going to see a slightly safer turn from Wolfe. Foul play into the Groudon, a lot of damage there. It does have a crazy high attack stat. And in the sun, this Yveltal is going to get caught with a big Fire Punch. Stack Attacker, though, thinking that there was going to be that Kyogre on the way in, does skill swap immediately, taking Desolate Land as an ability for itself. But it does give Beast Boost over to this Groudon. So, in a way, it's not really giving him the same benefit he was expecting. He'd love to be able to allow that Kyogre to come in and then do the skill swap on him.
Yep.
But now he's got Beast Boost on Groudon, and he just has to preserve Desolate Land on Stack Attacker.
Yeah, so Wolfe showing Protect as a move. We've seen it quite a few times on stream before with other players as well. Something that was not that popular on Incineroar before, but really allows you to stand there in the face of a Primal Groudon and just, make it through one more turn. However, Luca reading into that, going for the Fire Punch on Yveltal, which is now in KO range of another Fire Punch. So Wolfe has to make a decision. Does he want to withdraw the Incineroar into his own Kyogre that we assume he has in the back to make sure that Yveltal makes it through this turn? But then, he could run into that skill swap trap once again, and then it's, for Wolfe at least, it's a little bit more difficult to reset the weather.
Well, the Incineroar's coming in place of that Groudon, so I think this is going to be a low damage turn from Luca, and it's really up to Wolfe to capitalize on that and punish him a little bit for that repositioning. Wolfe's going to do some repositioning of his own, though. That Kyogre making an appearance. Desolate Land is in play right now. It's on the Stack Attacker as an ability, so he's going to get to replace that with Primordial Seed. And this means if Luca wants to, shuffle the weather around, it's going to take a little more work.
That's actually pretty interesting, because Luca, if he decided to, say, set up a Trick Room this turn, he could skill swap next turn and doesn't have to switch in the Groudon to have Desolate Land on the field. So, quite a unique situation that you don't see that often, though. Since Wolfe played a lot in 2016, he's used to weird skill swap situations. Nope, no Trick Room, no skill swap, just a Gyro Ball, and that does not knock out the Yveltal. Big turn there for Wolfe as he regains 50% of its Yveltal's HP using that Aguav Berry, or Papa Berry, rather.
Yeah, that's a big issue for him now. That Yveltal's going to be very, very difficult to take out. For me, this Stack Attacker not Trick Rooming is starting to raise an eyebrow. I don't know how you feel about it, Marcus, but I'm kind of wondering, you've got the position, you've got the option to skill swap and control that weather, but it would be so much nicer to do it with a Trick Room. Is there any reason in particular you think Luca might be holding on to that? Or is it something that he thinks Wolfe is just too prepared for?
Yeah, maybe he's sure that his opponent will be faster on Trick Room with his Kyogre. I mean, Wolfe also still has that Bronzong, and Bronzong, being naturally faster than Stakataka, has the option to skill swap after Stakataka skill swaps. So that would be one way for Wolfe to reset the weather even if we are under Trick Room. And the other reason could be that maybe he wants to bait Wolfe into setting up Tailwind, so that then he definitely has the guaranteed speed advantage with Trick Room. Though Wolfe not going for that, calling back the Groudon, bringing in the Bronzong, and I felt like Wolfe was always had like some sort of answer. Like he could always switch in maybe his Bronzong or the Incineroar to try and reset Trick Room if he wanted to, and Luca tried to use those turns to do some more damage with Gyro Ball, though unfortunately for him was not quite able to get the KO on the Yveltal.
Well, Groudon's got Desolate Land again. That's coming back into play, so that Kyogre leaving the field could be quite important here. We're just going to see some little bits of damage exchanged between these Pokemon. Not the craziest of turns, but overall it's a repositioning turn, and that's going to be very important.
Yeah, very positional game. Neither of them have lost a Pokemon so far, but now the Tapu Lele making it on the field once again as the Bronzong makes it on the field for Wolfe. So now just half a turn too early, as now the Psychic Terrain is over, though I don't think it's particularly important for either player. So we have already seen Tapu Lele carries Taunt, so that is one option it has to shut down the Bronzong from using some of its support moves, though we have also seen that this Bronzong carries the Psychium Z. So that would be one option for Wolfe to also set up the Trick Room, but I have a feeling that just like Luca before, he could be a little bit hesitant about setting up Trick Room, as once again it's not quite clear as to whether the Groudon or the Kyogre would be faster on the Trick Room.
They haven't actually gone head-to-head and figured it out yet, and in this best-of-3 set, you do have to wonder, would that be an important piece of information to get your hands on, really, to figure out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, what you want to do is you want to figure that out in a situation where you have already won the battle, you know? But if you're risking figuring it out, but then if you get it wrong, you just lose, then you lost one game in a best-of-3 just to figure out that little piece of information. So yeah, both of them really trying to zone out their opponent and get into position.
Well, we get our first knockout of the game. Tapu Lele is felled by the Gyro Ball from Bronzong.
Ooh, and the Roar revealed there.
Yeah, Bronzong is going to take that out, but not before Tapu Lele decided to land a Moonblast. It was supposed to go to the Yveltal. Did end up hitting that Incineroar though, and the big thing I think here for Wolfe is he's now got his Incineroar in play, and there's no Psychic Terrain down.
Yeah.
So, he's got the opportunity to start playing around with Fake Outs again.
You can imagine if that Roar put the Primal Kyogre of Wolfe, and that would be disastrous for Luca, but now it's just the Yveltal. I still think that this situation is kind of bad for Luca, as now Yveltal and Incineroar are both on the field, and yeah, Groudon can only touch either of them. So he might be forced to try and win the game by setting up Trick Room eventually, though I still feel like Wolfe is in a dominant position there with the Bronzong and the Kyogre still waiting in the back, so he has the tools to reset the weather. He also has the Intimidate on the Primal Groudon of his opponent, and his Yveltal, yeah, it was on the verge of being knocked out, but still sitting there kind of healthy.
Yeah, no, it's still in a pretty good position. You know, we saw that the big damage done to it earlier was actually by Fire Punch.
Yeah.
And there's a very easy way to neutralize that Fire Punch in switching in Primal Kyogre and the Primordial Sea. So it's going to be a tough one. I think with the Stakataka back out and Luca now a little bit up against it, his quickest Pokemon in the team has been knocked out. Now might be the time to try and get a Trick Room. And even though Wolfe can see it coming, know it's going to happen, that's fine. You just have to play to your outs and make sure that you see when he's going to try and reverse it. You see when he's going to try and play within it. And just make sure you respond to all of those kind of questions that Wolfe will be asking of you.
Yeah, I think for Luca, he might want to look into withdrawing his Groudon, switching in Incineroar, and then setting up Trick Room next turn. Though Wolfe is already preparing for that by calling back his Yveltal that wouldn't do too much damage, instead bringing in the Bronzong that has the opportunity to either reset the Trick Room if Wolfe wants that, or reset the weather with Skill Swap, or put something to sleep with that Hypnosis that we've seen earlier.
Yeah, well, Bronzong has its pick of options, really, for what it wants to do to try and stop Luca executing this strategy, which he's only shown to do with 3 Pokemon. The switching keeps going, though. Bronzong's in and Kyogre's in. So Primordial Sea will be the dominant weather, of course, until Luca decides to bring in the Groudon with Desolate Land. And the Gyro Ball this time heading towards Bronzong. That's not very much damage at all.
Yeah, nicely done by Wolfe. Now has both the Bronzong as well as Kyogre on the field, kind of forcing Luca to switch in Groudon sooner rather than later. Of course, for this turn, he could just go for the Fake Out into the Kyogre to prevent any big Water type attack, but eventually he's like forced to bring in the Groudon, and then Wolfe, on the other hand, kind of knows that and can can play accordingly and expect that. So now it really goes to show that if you have one more Pokemon left than your opponent, if it's such a positional game like this, you have some more resources, and I feel like Wolfe slowly but steadily is playing himself into a position where he's ready to take a big knockout.
And this has been a pretty long game, actually, as this format goes. I mean, we're approaching that 15-minute mark.
Yep.
We've still only got one Pokemon actually knocked out. And this is definitely one of Wolfe's kind of signature styles, as he never gives up something easily, never makes that one-for-one trade.
Yep.
If he can avoid it, you know. It's been really, I don't want to say grindy, but he's making sure that Luca never gets that upper hand and he's never having to fight out of that position. We are going to see the Kyogre try and Water Spout. Not an option with Desolate Land in play. And now that Desolate Land and the harsh sunlight is here, we're going to see a Flare Blitz from Incineroar, and that has dropped Bronzong, leveling up the Pokemon count at 3-3 and maybe opening the door for a certain Trick Room play from Luca.
Yeah, big turn here for Luca. Not only was he able to remove the Bronzong, but he also got the opponent's Kyogre in a rather awkward situation now where it's kind of forced to switch out. Just like with Luca before, where it seemed pretty predictable that he had to switch into his Groudon, now it feels like Wolfe is absolutely forced to call back his Kyogre and switch in Incineroar. So that's something that now Luca can take advantage of and maybe double up into the Yveltal, or probably like do something like switch out the Groudon and U-turn again. So I feel like Luca all of a sudden is back in the game, and I'm not sure what Wolfe was thinking there, not expecting the switch and the Flare Blitz. So yeah, well done by Luca.
Yeah, no, the Flare Blitz boost was needed that boost from the sunlight, so certainly a big turn for Luca. As you say, the Kyogre's almost forced to leave.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't leave and Yveltal gets knocked out this turn, it's stuck.
Yep.
The duration of the game in harsh sunlight. The Incineroar coming in, though, not exactly a bad Pokemon to bring in. That Intimidate's going to be valuable against both Groudon and Incineroar. And that may make this Yveltal just that little bit harder to knock out here. So we'll see exactly how Luca responds. He does remove his Groudon. I'm not sure if he's shaking your head or just getting really into it there, because he's, you know, feeling okay about this turn. Yveltal will foul play, though. That foul play heading directly towards the Incineroar. Incineroar holding on. It's not a very effective hit, obviously.
Another Flare Blitz. Okay, now after being intimidated and in the sunlight, will it be enough to get the KO on the Yveltal? It is enough with a critical hit. And you can see it on Wolfe's face. He's not happy to see that. However, in return, the Incineroar is also knocking itself out with the recoil damage. So now we're down to a 2-against-2 situation. And now we will finally find out which of the two Pokemon is slower. And I have a feeling like this is going to be very important here.
Yeah, we've discussed it all game, which is slower and which will get to command the weather. Spoilers, I've actually peeped ahead, and the result, I think...
Don't spoil it for me, I don't know.
It'll determine the game, Marcus. There it is. Primordial Seed goes up first, which means that Desolate Land activates afterwards. And honestly, like, Wolfe is going to struggle now, I think, to deal with this Groudon. The good thing is, he has got it at a pretty decent amount of health removed, and his Kyogre's at full health. So if he has Ice Beams, start weaving those in. But he's got to deal with both a Stack Attacker and a Groudon. There is another bit of respite for Wolfe, obviously. His Incineroar will get to do more damage with Flare Blitz.
I mean, let's see, though. If Wolfe can predict his opponent's move, I feel like he can now probably double up into the Stack Attacker or go for the Fake Out. Yeah, and that means that there is a chance for his Kyogre to knock out the Groudon before Groudon hits back, just with, as you said, repetitive Ice Beams. Precipice Blades, while it will knock out the Incineroar, it will definitely not knock out the Kyogre in one hit. So it's still a situation where both can win, and it can come down to like whether Precipice Blades hits or misses, how much damage does Ice Beam do, and I don't even know how Stack Attacker like would fare against that Kyogre. It was intimidated before, and so but there's still some options for both players.
We've seen the moves on Stack Attacker. We know that it's pretty limited in its kind of offensive choices because it does prefer to be taking things like that Gravity, like that Skill Swap. The Groudon will get caught with an Ice Beam. It's not enough for the knockout. Precipice Blades heading towards both Pokemon on Wolfe's side, and Kyogre avoids the attack. Stack Attacker, though, doesn't want that to happen again in future and decides to Gravity. My big question here, I have to ask it, where is the Trick Room in this turn, Marcus?
Well, yeah, of course, now Luca has the option to go for a Protect and Trick Room play, and then he has Trick Room available for the next couple of turns. However, we don't know the speed of Incineroar of Wolfe either, I think. So if Incineroar is slower than this Groudon, then maybe a Flare Blitz boosted by the harsh sunlight could actually come back to bite Luca and take the KO there. So he definitely has to play for that out, protect the Groudon, set up the Trick Room, But Wolfe probably also knows that and has now the option to go for an attack into the Stakataka if he wants to. Yeah, there's the throat chop.
Yeah, that's going to try and do some damage to Stakataka. It does trigger him, but, you know, the big thing here is he needed it up a little earlier, I think. It's been an interesting position. This Incineroar could just essentially end the game.
Yeah.
You know, if it does land a big hit. It's been a long time coming, and now with the Trick Room in play, Luca has to hope he can capitalize. He's not going to miss because of the gravity. We know that he's going to be able to hit his moves, and this one's going to be interesting.
Yeah, he wants to intimidate his opponent's Incineroar with the skill swap. Nicely done by Luca.
Yeah, he's got to help with
whether that it's enough.
He's got to help with whatever he can, and stealing and intimidate with skill swap is potentially going to either win or lose in the game. If this Groudon can hold on and knock out this Kyogre and deal with this Incineroar, this could be huge. Incineroar starts off, does move first in the Trick Room, will land the Throat Chop, and it's not enough.
Kyogre hangs in there, but even though Incineroar will go down, Kyogre still has another chance to get the knockout that Incineroar wasn't able to get. So if this Ice Beam is aimed at the ground, we will end in a 1-against-1 situation, Kyogre against Stakataka.
Yeah, this Kyogre lands the Ice Beam. That's more than enough to beat the Groudon, and that does mean, of course, that the Sunlight is going to fade.
Yep.
That's gone with the Groudon here.
Yes, so
Stakataka's pretty much vulnerable at this point, and it's not the best at special defense.
Definitely. So you also could have made a case for maybe Stakataka skill swapping the Groudon to keep Desolate Land on the field a little longer, but now, yeah, Wolfe is able to use Origin Pulse, use Water Spout, uses Water-type attacks, but of course Trick Room is still up, Gyro Ball comes out, does a lot of damage, of course. Wow, with a critical hit.
All right,
wow.
All right.
Origin Pulse, though, does connect, and that should be enough to seal the game.
Yeah, it's going to hit.
As it
is.
Not
got any weather effects in play. And Stakataka is not the most special defensive Pokemon. That game really came down to the wire. The Trick Room, you know, he needed something there to make sure he was moving before another Ice Beam, but that put the Incineroar in range, and Wolfe, even though he was up against it, even though it looked pretty tough for him with that situation, with the loss of control of the weather, managing to find a way out, a true hallmark of a top player.
Yeah, well done by Wolfe, but also Luca, who for the beginning of the game looked as though he was on the back foot, managed to climb his way back in the game, and then, well, the reveal of the speed here really playing in his favor. Now, of course, he knows that his Groudon is slower and can abuse that fact in the future, but yeah, Wolfe, wow, keeping his head closed, like thinking things through and then coming up with an endgame plan, even though he lost the weather advantage to his opponent, in the end was able to clean up this game. And of course, it had to end with that critical hit that almost KO'd that Kyogre.
Yeah, it came in really close.
Yeah.
For those of you just joining us, we did have a slightly longer game one than we usually do. So let's just do a quick review of the teams. Wolfe's team on the right will be Yveltal, Incineroar, Togedemaru, Gengar, the Kyogre, and Bronzong combination. We saw that he left the Togedemaru and the Gengar back at home for this one. And then Luca's team over there on the left of Dawnwings, Necrozma, Groudon, Salamence, Tapu Lele, Incineroar, and Stakataka. The two that Luca decided to leave behind in that game, the Salamence and the Dawnwings Necrozma. If you were either of these players, Marcus, would there be one of those bench Pokemon you'd be switching in, or are you thinking that, hey, it was such a close game, it could have gone either way, the four selected were perfect?
Yeah, I think for both of them, they kind of need their Steel-type Trick Room setter, so that's Stakataka for Luca and Bronzong for Wolfe. Both of them really want Incineroar and their Primal as well, so I think these three are kind of set in stone. Then usually for Wolfe in this matchup, you would want to use the Mecha Gengar, though as we have seen before, there is the Shat Shell on Luca's Stakataka, so yeah, that's why Wolfe is playing this matchup a little bit differently than he's probably used to, and instead is opening up with the Yveltal once again. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Wolfe to bring Yveltal over Mega Gengar, because yeah, Mega Gengar is really there to bring your primal Pokemon into position, but if your opponent is free to switch in their Groudon and on the return you want to go for a powerful Water-type attack, then that just doesn't work. So I like the Pokemon choices for both these players. I mean, you could swap out Tapu Lele potentially for either Ultra Necrozma, but that really doesn't do well against Yveltal at all, or the Salamence, but that really doesn't do well against Bronzong. So I feel like both of them were really bringing the Pokemon that they needed to in this matchup. I also think that this Yveltal and Bronzong lead is really covering Wolfe's spaces quite well. As for Luca, he really needs to bring his Primal Groudon into position, and I also think that leading off with Intimidating Incineroar is a good way to achieve that.
Yeah, making sure that you've got those Intimidates down. Certainly helping Tapu Lele, starting out with a taunt here, making sure that Bronzong's options are limited. But we saw earlier on, there's a couple ways around it. You can either attack, or what we're seeing here, as you mentioned earlier, Marcus, Z moves.
Yeah.
I do not care about that.
So we're seeing the Z Trick Room coming out from the Bronzong that will raise its accuracy, though a small problem remains. Taunt, of course, is still in effect, so it cannot just go on and go for those skill swaps and Hypnosis. Instead, Bronzong, though, could go in the offensive, go for, say, a Gyro Ball into that Tapu Lele. But yeah, Wolfe really setting up the Trick Room early on. I'm not really sure if I agree with that play, because now, since Bronzong is taunted, he is also not able to reverse the Trick Room if that situation comes up. So he might want to probably swap out Bronzong at some point, and that's what he does immediately, so that then later on he's able to maybe U-turn out with Incineroar, bring Bronzong right back in and get into a position where he is under Trick Room and where there's no taunt on the Bronzong, and I think that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah, well, the Kyogre is going to come in immediately, bringing its obviously Primal Reversion and control of the weather in this one. In Game 1, both players were a little bit hesitant to show off their Primal Pokemon, a little bit hesitant to do that, and now with that piece of information gathered already, I think Wolfe's just pretty happy to try and show that one off, not trying to hide anything anymore. We're going to see a U-turn from the Incineroar, so that's leaving the field right now, saving its Intimidate for a little bit later on, maybe when it's got a nice target that it wants to hit, and that's an easy way for Luca to get in his Groudon. Groudon as well, given the opportunity to Primal Revert and bring Desolate Land, so at the end of this turn, control of the weather pretty much be living with Luca.
Yeah, but I think we might be looking at a U-turn from Wolfe's Incineroar to bring back in that Bronzong, and if that works out, then he would be in a fantastic position. Since Tapu Lele is on the field, yeah, there is the U-turn coming out, hitting into the ground. Of course, the damage is not what Wolfe cares about, but being able to switch into Bronzong could be really huge.
Yeah, this is actually something I remember from the team you guys played in 2016. That ability to kind of rotate through the team really quick with one manual switch, then a U-turn, then you've got the Pokemon back in.
Did Luca call that and taunt the slot? Oh, it's actually the Evoltar coming in.
Oh, the Evoltar comes in. I mean, if he's taunted that slot, it's not going to be going great. But if he's gone with a Moonblast, that's going to be a big deal.
Wow, that's a really, really good play on Luca's end. Wolfe called that, though, and decided not to switch into the Bronzong as he probably planned. But yeah, that really goes to show how good Luca is as a player. He anticipates a play like this, goes for a taunt in what was an Incineroar, knowing that, okay, the speed tiers are swapped because of U-turn, because of Trick Room, and my opponent is probably going to switch and U-turn. So really hard calling this play, and I'm really a big fan of this taunt by Luca, but also by Wolfe kind of identifying, okay, I'm up against a player who knows what they're doing, so he probably would have lost straight away if he switched into Bronzong, though now with the Evoltar, he definitely still is in a fighting position.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst Pokemon to be switching in. It's not exactly frail. It's not exactly easy to beat. That's a big level of respect there, I think, to call that there was going to be a very hard read involved, and then respond to that read accordingly. Things are going to be switching around. Kyogre leaving the field on Wolfe's side. That's being replaced immediately by Bronzong, and then Tapu Lele over on Luca's side, switching out in place of Incineroar. Incineroar gets to Intimidate. That's an interesting choice because, you know, we don't really see either of these Pokemon relying too heavily on that kind of attacking stat. This Precipice Blades is going to hit absolutely nothing. The Foul Play to follow up, we're going to be doing a whole lot more than that, bringing this Groudon down to just under half. I think we've seen it a couple times now that 2 Foul Plays will get there. That's a big turn of switching from Wolfe. To not take any damage. Yeah,
big hit there but from Wolfe. I'm pretty sure Luca was expecting Incineroar to be coming in for Wolfe, but he instead is really riskily switching in the Bronzong against a Primal Groudon. Of course, if your opponent is going for Precipice Blades, then that's great, but there's also the potential for a Fire Punch, though Wolfe calls this correctly. Now still has all 4 of his Pokemon remaining, and now could potentially, if he wanted to, swap into his Kyogre once again to reset the weather into his favor.
Yeah, I think he has to do that at this juncture just to really lock out all the options.
Or go for Hypnosis.
He's going to just call that one and catch Stack Attacker, which came in place of the Groudon with the Hypnosis. That's really, really interesting to see that call being made. The Snarl, though, landing from Incineroar, going to do a little bit of damage to both. Nothing too significant. No big special attack drops that I think are going to be of major importance throughout the rest of this one, while Yveltal continues its assaults with the foul play. Decent damage there, I'd just say, to that Stakataka.
Definitely, and it seems very difficult for Luca to actually deal with that Yveltal. While of course he has Tabulele, which is a Fairy-type Pokemon, under Trick Room, both Bronzong and Yveltal are faster than Tabulele and could knock it out with a combination of Foul Play and Gyro Ball. So it's very difficult for Luca right now to get a lot of damage on the Yveltal, especially considering how smart Wolfe is playing with his own Incineroar and his own Intimidate, making sure that the Foul Play he launched at Primal Groudon earlier was at full power. So really nicely done here by Wolfe.
Yeah, Wolfe keeping up his trend of repositioning as much as possible. Kyogre entering the field, Primordial Sea of course coming into play, and if that's not dealt with in the near future, then guess what, you know, we're going to be in a position where he's just going to be able to start launching big attacks. Stakataka remains asleep, obviously, and the Fire-type attack from Incineroar fizzling out in the heavy rain, not able to do anything this turn. Another turn of 0 damage from Luca, but a little bit extra from Wolfe there. The Trick Room does end alongside, of course, that Psychic Terrain. He will be able to reset it this game if he thinks it's of utmost importance, but, you know, the Trick Room hasn't really been capitalized on by either player.
Yeah, and I think Trick Room ends at the perfect timing for Wolfe. Now that he has both his legendary Pokemon on the field, both of them are now faster outside of Trick Room. So Luca, once again, has to come up with a plan if he wants to reset Trick Room somehow. His Stakataka needs to be protected, but at the same time, he also probably would go down to a combination of something like a Foul Play and Ice Beam or something like that. So he has to be really, really careful with the Stakataka, but even if he manages to keep it around for a little longer, it's still asleep and wouldn't need to wake up. So yeah, Wolfe, with that Hypnosis, of course it was not perfectly accurate, but still an option to really shift the game in his favor if that connected, which it did.
Yeah, well, Stakataka's leaving the field in place of the Groudon. If Wolfe's called this and attacked into this with that Yveltal, we could be seeing the game really hurtling towards an end as soon as possible. We'll have to see what he's decided to go with. The sunlight, of course, is extremely harsh in the Desolate Lands. Yveltal does Foul Play. It will be heading towards that Groudon, and it is just going to be enough. It would have been so close based on the numbers we saw earlier, and that means that Wolfe has no threat of Groudon at all. We already see a handshake extended there, to be quite honest with you, and I think Luca knows that, you know, without access to Desolate Land for the rest of the game, his goose might be cooked.
And Wolfe, you can really see it on his face. He looks super happy and satisfied after a long period of time where he wasn't able to have one of those really, really good finishes at a tournament. Yeah, he was saying that in an interview earlier, how it's been like over a year for him to top cut a bigger tournament, and now he has managed to do that and is so close of advancing into the top 4, getting a trophy, of course, all the prizes and championship points, but Luca still is trying to throw at him what he has with the Tapu Lele. That now does outspeed the Yveltal, but it looks like Luca is just going for the forfeit, knowing that without his primal Pokemon he does not have the damage output, and looks like his Cinderella story will end here. The underdog Luca, though, yeah, in my opinion, a very strong showing for him, his very first international championships, making it all the way in the top 8. And here is our winner, Wolfe Glick.
Yeah, that's been phenomenal play throughout that whole set. The first game taking us nearly 20 minutes.
Yeah, wow.
The second one resolved in 10. We talked about it a little bit in the game, but you know, the primal matchup has always been of utmost importance when it comes down to these